Hey YouTube, Common Collector here, and today I am bringing you guys an update to my Mutant deck profile. This is a really awesome TCG exclusive archetype that came out last year in Phantom Rage, and just got some new support with the new Mutant in Battle of Chaos, so I thought it was time for a good update for the deck. Also, if you guys are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. We are closing in on 2,000 subscribers, so I would really appreciate the sub. But without any further ado, let's get on into the profile. So this is a really cool sort of control deck that can do some really cool grinding and stuff and go into some really neat plays. So we are starting off with the 3 copies of the new Mutant with this card. If you control a Mutant card, you're able to special summon this card from your hand, so it is a really nice little extender that the deck really needed. And then also with this card, you can tribute this card from the field and then banish 1 Mutant card from your hand or deck. And then you're able to special summon a corresponding mutant monster from your deck. So if you banish a monster from your hand or deck, then you're able to special summon out the beast. For Mist, you need to banish a spell, and then for the Mutant Arsenal, you need to banish a trap from your hand or deck. The ability to banish right from your deck is really cool for the cost, so I really like that. I generally go for Beast or Arsenal, but sometimes the Mist does come up. We will get to those cards a little bit later. Then we're going on into 3 copies of the Mutant MT05, and then 3 copies, we're just going to do these back to back, 3 copies of the ST46. A really nice little trick for these cards, if you guys don't know, the M05, when this card is normal or special summoned, adds a monster from your deck to your hand, and then this card adds a spell or trap. The nice little tip to remember, because these 2 cards look really similar when you're like searching through your deck and whatnot while you're getting off some sort of a search effect. Basically with these cards, the M05 searches for a monster, that's what the M stands for, and then the ST46 searches for a spell or trap. So that's like a nice little hack if you're not into reading the cards, which, let's be honest, Yu-Gi-Oh players do not like reading cards. But then also with these 2 cards, they have basically really similar effects to the Mutant, where you can tribute this card from the field and then banish 1 other Mutant card from your hand or field, and then that is going to allow you to special summon out those corresponding monsters. Again, monster for Beast, Mist is for a spell, and then traps gets you Arsenal. Then getting on into those boss monsters, we are playing 2 copies of the Mutant Beast. This card is just an absolute house. It's so nice for the deck, because with this card, your opponent cannot target this card with monster effects. Then also, once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell card or effect, quick effect, you can banish 1 card from your hand or field in order to negate the activation. And if you do banish that card, which is really nice, if you're playing up against Drytrons or something and you can banish their ritual spell, or Evil Eyes to banish their equips, which is really insane, or any other big matchups, Sky Strikers to banish the engage is a really nice one. Then also with this card, if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can target 1 of your banished mutant trap cards and add it to your hand. So each of the boss monsters, they basically work with all 3 of the card types, the monster, spell, or traps, and so then they correspond accordingly. So then we have the Mist, which is sort of your spell, the spell monster. So with this card, your opponent cannot target this card with spell cards, and then once per turn when your opponent activates a trap card, quick effect, banish 1 card from your hand or field to draw 2 cards. So it does not negate the trap or interact with the trap in any way, but it does help you to draw a couple cards, which is kind of nice. It does come up sometimes. And then this card adds a banished monster from your graveyard to your, or from your banished pile to your hand. And then the Arsenal can't be targeted by traps, which is really cool, because you can sort of work around imperm and stuff like that. With this card, when your opponent activates a monster effect, banish 1 card from your hand or field, target 1 monster on the field, and then banish it. Really cool, again, just to banish key monsters. And then also this card gets you a mutant spell when this card is destroyed by an opponent's card. So these cards are really cool to just sort of interact with however your opponent's playstyle is. If they have like 1 spell card that is really detrimental or important for the deck, I like to go into Beast, and then you can not worry about getting targeted by monster effects, which is really cool. Then we're going to get on into 3 copies of our Dimension Shifter. This is just a really nice card for the deck, because you do not really care if your stuff gets banished. We will get to that a little bit later with our other cards, which deal with the banished pile. But then we will get on into 2 copies of the Mutant Fusion. This card is just your basic bread and butter fusion spell for the deck, but this card actually does allow you to sort of do sort of like a Shadow Fusion effect, where with this card, if your opponent activates a spell or trap, or activates a card or effect during your turn, you're able to use up to one monster from your deck and graveyard as fusion materials, and you banish the materials as cost or for the fusion summon. So it is really nice to be able to just banish from your deck and or graveyard, which is really cool. Then we have the Mutant Evolution Lab. It is our field spell, but we're only playing 2 copies. It's kind of a good telltale sign if you have a not so good field spell if you're only playing 2 copies and you're not playing terraforming. But with this card, you can sort of revamp your hand because if you have a mutant monster in your hand that's kind of getting cloggy, sometimes these level 8 monsters do sometimes clog up in your hands. So you can use this card to shuffle that card back, or put it back to the bottom of the deck, draw a new card, which is kind of nice. And then also when this card is activated, you can special summon one of your level 4 or lower mutants from your hand to the field, which is kind of cool. 3 copies of E-Telly, because this card is at 3, and also all of our mutant low-level guys are all level 3 or lower, which is absolutely insane just to be able to get whatever card you need out onto the field. This is a little bit weird, but I'm playing 2 copies of Pot of Extravagance. A lot of people like to play 3 in this deck. I just don't really like it, and I wanted to keep this at a tight 40 cards, basically because of like all of the floodgates with Dimension Shifter and some of the traps that we'll get into a little bit later. But basically you want to get into Dimension Shifter as quickly as possible, and Pot of Extravagance kind of can hurt you a little bit because you activate Pot of Extravagance, draw 2 cards, and then you'll maybe draw into that Dimension Shifter, and then it's like, okay, well now with Dimension Shifter, there's a card in your graveyard now, so you can't even activate the Dimension Shifter. So overall, I just like only playing 2 copies of Extravagance. With a lot of my testing, there's still duels where I end up banishing like 2 or all 3 of my Synthesis in my extra deck, and then I can't really play too much. So overall, I definitely like only playing the 2 copies of Extrav. We have our 1 copy of Dimensional Fissure. Again, we just don't really care about banishing stuff, so with this card, any monster sent to the graveyard is banished instead. It is so nice to be able to use that. It's going to definitely hurt your opponent more than it hurts you. 1 copy of Called by the Grave to stop hand traps. Then getting on into the traps, we have our 3 copies of Mutant Cry. This is your other fusion card, but this card allows you to fusion summon, obviously, during your opponent's turn. And then also, this card just banishes from your graveyard for the fusion materials, which is really cool, or also on your field if that applies. But just to be able to like fill up your graveyard with like 3 of the level 8s, and then use Mutant Cry, and then you're able to go into the Mutant Ultimus is really, really powerful. Then we have our 2 copies of the Mutant Expansion. I was only going to be playing 1 of this card because it's honestly not that great. And we have a ton of other ways to get into our monsters, like with the E-Telly and with our Mutant Evolution Lab. But overall, with like the Mutant, how you can just banish a trap from your deck in order to get into the arsenal, it is really cool. So I do like playing the 2 copies of this, just so I have 1 copy on the field, and then I can banish the other copy for the Mutant if it comes up. But with this card, when this card is activated, you can special summon a level 4 or lower mutant from your deck or add it to your hand. And then also this adds a little bit of protection for your level 8s. 3 copies of Tickaboo. This card is, it's just going to hurt your opponent more than it hurts you because you generally aren't going to be summoning too much stuff out onto the field. So only having 1 monster of each type is totally fine, because also when you get to your level 8s, like the, you have your Arsenal, which is a machine, you have your Beast, which is a beast, and then also your Mist is, I want to say a spellcaster. I'm not totally sure on that. 1 second. Yeah, it is a spellcaster, so that's going to allow you to get around Tickaboo as well if you're trying to go into all of those, while all of your low-level guys are your psychics, so that's totally fine. 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, just so we can negate some stuff. It's really our only like hand trap besides Dimension Shifter. 1 copy of Trap Trick. This is a little bit weird, again, sort of like with my weird ratios with Extravagance, but I do like playing the 1 copy of Trap Trick. It sort of helps make you a really well-rounded deck. You're playing about 1/3 monsters, 1/3 spells, 1/3 traps to sort of help facilitate with all of those costs for your mutant. But then basically with this, with the Imperm and then the Trap Tricks and then also your Mutant Cry, it basically allows you to play 4 copies of Cry, and Cry is just so insane for this deck. Then lastly, 1 copy of Macrocosmos, just basically another copy of your Dimensional Fissure to be able to banish all of your opponent's stuff that goes to the graveyard, which is really, really cool. Now let's get on into the extra deck. We're playing 3 copies of the Mutant Synthesis. This card is so good for the deck. It's not quite as good as Ultimus, but you're going to go into this way more often, so you're going to be seeing this card on your field way more, because with this card, it only needs 2 mutant monsters as its material. When this card is special summoned, then you're able to destroy one of your opponent's cards on the field, which is really nice, just to be able to disrupt certain things or blow up big boss monsters that don't have protection. Then also when your opponent activates a card, either monster, spell, or trap, you can basically quick effect activate this effect so that this card is not or so that it is unaffected for the rest of the turn by those same cards. So even if your opponent activates like Infinite Impermanence, you can just chain to this, and then now this card is unaffected by trap cards for the rest of the turn, which is really cool. And then lastly, when this card gets destroyed by an opponent's card, you are able to add one of your banished mutant cards back to your hand, which is kind of nice. Then we're getting on into 3 copies of the Ultimus. This card is really nice to go into whenever you can. You just basically need to fill up your graveyard with like 1 Synthesis and then maybe 2 of the main deck level 8s, and then use your Mutant Cry, and then you're able to go into this big boy. So this card is basically Invoked Mechaba, but with this card you need 3 level 8 or higher mutant monsters, and then when a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can banish 1 mutant card from your hand, graveyard, or face-up field of the same type, monster, spell, or trap, to negate the activation. And if you do banish that card, which is really cool just to be able to banish basically anything as long as you have the requirement, and the fact that you can banish from your graveyard is insane. And then lastly, just like how all of the level 8 monsters, level 8 or higher monsters, sort of have the effect that when they're destroyed by an opponent's card, you're able to add one of your banished mutant cards. This card is even more insane because when this card gets destroyed by an opponent's card, you're able to add up to 3 of your banished mutant cards of one of each type, so monster, spell, or trap. So basically in your graveyard or in your banished pile, if you can get 1 copy of Mutant Cry, 1 copy of Mutant Fusion or your Evolution Lab, and then basically any of your starters like Mutant or the ST or M05. Basically, you can just add these 3 cards back to your hand, and then you're good to go for your next turn. It is absolutely insane. So your opponent's going to have to try to sort of get around getting rid of the Ultimus, and then still having enough to back up the 3 cards that you're adding to your hand with basically a full graveyard setup as well. Then we're going on into 1 copy of Linkuriboh, 1 copy of Almirage just to help fill up the graveyard, 1 Cross Sheet because we do fusion summon quite a bit, 1 copy of Predaplant Anaconda, just because we can use that with our Mutant Fusion, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, and 1 Unicorn. And then lastly, we're playing 1 copy of BLS. This card can really be anything if you want. And then 1 copy of Mekk-Knight Crusader Avramax to sort of work around with the IP Masquerena along with the Nightmare package. So it just sort of helps to sort of get an indestructible boss monster out there and help clean up games. But guys, that is going to do it for this deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. It is a little bit of a complicated deck to run. You guys probably found me fumbling in the deck profile a little bit. It is sort of a complicated deck. You've got to work around all of like the Beast, Arsenal, and Mist and whatnot. But overall, these are some really cool, powerful cards. And it's a TCG exclusive archetype. So it is really fun to be able to mess around with this card, with these cards. And hopefully you guys got these in your hands last year when Phantom Rage came out. If not, the cards aren't totally super expensive. So hopefully you guys are enjoying this. Let me know what you guys thought about down in the comments. And also, again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Let's hit that 2,000 subscriber mark, and we will see you guys for the next profile. Peace.